Good morning and welcome to this Enterprise Ireland Industry Insights webinar on the Agritech sector. It's been just over 6 months now since we started to feel the effects of this global pandemic. Throughout this, the agricultural ecosystem has remained operational, ensuring the continued supply of food to households all over the world. Today, we will delve into the future of this sector. With the support of our expert panel, we'll discuss the opportunity it presents for Irish companies selling into this market. Over the next hour, we'll look at a range of topics, including International Markets Week, the driving factors behind terms such as Agriculture 4.0 and digital farming. We'll look at new products and developments, innovations coming to market. We'll look at the regions who are adapting these solutions at a fast rate. And we'll also take a look at COVID-19. We'll take a look at it from the lens of the supplier-customer interaction and the importance of a strong marketing presence in this time. We'll have time for a question and answer session at the end. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a chat window. If you have any questions on anything we discussed throughout, just add it to this and we'll do our best to get to it before the end of the session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm delighted today to be joined for this discussion by an exciting group of guests. First up, we have a man who I've heard speak many times on this subject before, and he always has really interesting and insightful information for the listener. It's Mr. Robert Walker, European Growth Officer at Alltech and CEO of Keenan. Good morning, Robert.
Yeah, hi, Brian. Good to be on the show.
Thank you. Next up, we have Brian McCardle, who has many years of experience in this sector and is currently the Export Development Manager with ProDig Attachment. Good morning, Brian.
Oh, how you doing? Great to be here.
And last but not least, somebody that everybody on this call will be familiar with, I'm sure, it's our Senior Regional Development Executive here at Enterprise Ireland, Mr. James Maloney.
Hey, Brian. Delighted to be here.
No problem. Thanks, James. So the discussion will run for somewhere in the region of 40 to 45 minutes. We'll have time for Q&A at the end, as I say. I want to start today by introducing International Markets Week. So this webinar is part of a series of webinars taking place where we look ahead to International Markets Week in October. Enterprise Ireland has over 40 offices located in key markets around the world. Some of these will cover single countries, others will cater for regional clusters. The purpose of these offices is to provide in-market support, and local knowledge, and understanding of the culture, the language, and the geography of the market. Provide introductions and lead development, and also provide information on market performance, sentiment, and mergers. We can support around the identification and prospecting of partners, providing research and potential partners in market, and also support around exhibition and networking opportunities. You may have seen this at events like Agritechnical last year, or more recently, Field Days as it moved online, where Enterprise Ireland client Magro picked up the International Innovation Award, which is very appropriate to what we're discussing today. Brian, at this point, I'd like to bring you in, please. I know you've had many years of working and developing international markets for agtech products and machinery. Can you describe to me how you collaborated and worked with international offices abroad?
That's right, yeah. Well, I've been over 40 years in the farm machinery business here in Ireland, working with manufacturers such as Keenan, Tanko, High Spec Engineering, Dairy Master, with the milking parlours, and now with ProDig with attachments. But I would have always in every market worked with the Enterprise Ireland office, and I found it an invaluable source of information. As you were saying, they're on the ground out there, and it's very difficult for us here in Ireland to try and figure out from time to time what's actually happening on the ground. So you can use their offices to try and gather information, look at potential dealers or importers or distributors that you can work with. So I've always found that invaluable. And particularly when it comes to trying to source an importer or distributor, the fact that Enterprise Ireland, you're an Enterprise Ireland client, the fact that they can recommend you to somebody out there means you're a professional company and you're worth looking at and listening to. And likewise, the other way around too, it's a two-way thing, because when Enterprise Ireland is introducing you to somebody, then they're also rubber stamping that company as somebody you can potentially deal with. So it has been invaluable.
Thank you, Brian. So as I say, this is all an incentive around promoting and introducing our International Markets Week, and that will take place from the 5th to the 9th of October. Traditionally, of course, this would have occurred face-to-face, and the meeting would have taken place in Dublin, but at present, because of the coronavirus, we are no longer able to have this in face-to-face meetings, so it'll take place virtually. Also present on that day will be our team of Brexit advisors, and they can provide you with information around currency and financial management, customs and logistics, and strategic sourcing as Brexit fast approaches. So by now, all Enterprise Ireland companies should have received the invitation. However, if you haven't, you can get in contact with us at the email on your screen, imwsupport@enterpriseireland.com. So we get into the topics for discussion today. The first thing I want to look at is the future of farm and technology. So in 2018, the World Government Summit launched a report called Agriculture 4.0, the future of farm and technology. This report highlighted 4 main developments placing pressure on the agriculture sector to meet the demands of the changing world. These included demographics such as population growth, urbanization, scarcity of natural resources like land degradation, water reduction, climate change, floods and drought. We've seen this in my own market in the UK this year, a particularly torrid year on that front. And food waste. It's estimated that somewhere in the region of 35 to 50% of food produced is not eaten. And yet many hundreds of millions of people go to bed every evening hungry. But at a more local level, we see what's driving it from the customer perspective. And in this case, our customer is the farmer. So it's profitability on the farm, efficiency, reduced labor requirements, data-driven support, increased safety both at the farm level and road safety, and also how they will meet environmentally friendly solutions. So whether we look at this from the high political level or the more local level, the conclusion all points in the same direction, that advanced technology solutions are critical to the future success, sustainability and competitiveness of farmers and in turn our food supply chain. Robbie, I'd like to bring you in at this point to start with, and in practical terms, I suppose, what do you think the main drivers are in the development of ag-tech and agri-technology?
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, I think some of them you mentioned right there in your introduction. I think from a farmer's perspective, they really are pressed for time. Time's a big one. Lifestyle is a big one. And then farm economics, profitability, that's big. But then from a consumer perspective, you also have a lot of pressure on this green agenda and welfare. And so what's driving it is that all of these things can be much better achieved by the use of new technologies, be it digital, be it biotech, or be it robotics. And so the farmers are needing to start using new technologies to try and achieve these goals.
Very good. And I suppose in terms of your own experience and launching and the introduction of a product like InTouch, what sort of advantages does that bring to the customer, and was this factored in the design stage of such an introduction?
So first of all, it's primarily around trying to drive farm efficiency. Farm efficiency has the knock-on effect is of course profitability, but then there's time management, and then there's also the green agenda. A more efficient farm is going to be a greener farm, a farm that produces less carbon, less nitrogen. So that's one of the reasons we did it. But ultimately, from a business perspective, we've gone away from an era of just selling a product, and we've now entered an era where we sell product plus service. And yes. And service in these modern times is not just sort of a face-to-face consultancy. It's also encompasses the digital or insights that we get from digital. And so, when we think about marketing in the past, the broad category of marketing would have been, brochures and trade shows and those kinds of things. Marketing of the future is going to be about delivering insights to farmers or to customers so that they can make their businesses more profitable or more efficient. And so we do see a changing face of sales and marketing. And so why do we do In Touch? Well, we do it because it collects data on farm that allows us to understand what the farmer is doing on a day-to-day basis. It allows us to give positive feedback to that farm so that we can help them be more efficient. And then, of course, as part of that efficiency, we are providing a overall solution, which is machinery plus consultancy. And then, of course, because we are part of the overall Alltech group, which provides nutrition, we can then also supply in some of those nutritional products. So it's a bundled offering, and it's an offering that makes more sense to a farmer because they're getting more out of their machine. They're not simply buying steel; they're buying a steel that has a positive output, whether it be on their life or their business or on the environment.
Very good. And James, from your perspective, do you think that the R&D of traditional engineering companies are aligned with the priorities of farmers and the introduction of this sort of technology to support with this?
Well, sure, Brian, in simple terms, they have to be, you know. Like we've seen great innovations in the past and brilliant products, but if nobody wants them or no one buys them, it's a costly R&D project. And so they really need to align themselves with what's happening in the priorities with agriculture and with the farming community at the minute. So like they work hand in hand, and as Robbie said before, like profitability and efficiency are interlinked. They come hand in hand. So like if you're creating a machine that can make a farmer's life can solve a problem, it increases the ability to expand the herd or grow more crops, or reduces the time spent in the farmyard or in the field, or gives more data and information to make better decisions on what has to be chose for inputs. And we can see that this happening with the Green Deal in European agriculture, where we're going to have a reduction in fertilizer and reduced pesticide application. So it's massively, like, R&D has to be aligned with farmer priorities, because you have to have the right tools for the job. The farmer has to be able to make it pay as well, and that's a really important point. The return on the investment has to be there for the farmer, because if you look at big shows like Agritech and the Grass and Muck event here in Ireland, the farmer essentially has to pay for everything that is there and to pay for the company development, because that's where the margin is made. So I think that this sector really has to be innovative. And you talked about a lot of the challenges that was identified in the report of Agriculture 4.0. And I think agriculture has gone through many periods of transition. If we look at the 70s, there was a boom when we joined the European Union in terms of production. I'm just about old enough to remember beef and butter mountains, and Brian, you're definitely old enough to remember the beef and butter mountains that was across Europe at that stage. So it is everything happens in a period of change, and I think the next one is really going to be focused on the low carbon agenda, looking at protecting our soils, looking at protecting the environment. And the big challenge will be to maintain the profitability that is available on farms, because farms have to remain economically viable for our companies to be able to make the investment in what they need to expand into the future in developing machines.
Thanks, James. And Brian, from your perspective then, do you hear from the customer, are they asking for these sort of advancements and the introduction to tech to their machinery, or is there reliance on the company to lead the way on this front?
It's a mixture of both, really, because we've all done so many shows in the past that you will be there, and farmers will come up asking you to try and develop a product or improve your product to help them along. But ideally, manufacturers should be leading the way. Well, you lead the way by listening to what farmers are actually requiring and requesting. And exactly as James and Robbie were saying there, it's all about efficiency and trying to produce a product now that helps make their lives simpler. Try and produce equipment that they can actually measure their profitability on farming. And it's actually, the whole process is speeded up so much now, I see, where farming, they're actually looking for apps that can actually give them information instantly as to how much profit they're actually making, because business and it's a profit and loss situation. So when they buy something from you, even though it's a product, it's something that they're buying to solve an issue or to try and make them more profitable. So we've got to listen to what they require, but we've also got to be proactive ourselves and try and go out there and provide solutions for them. And I think a lot of us on the Irish manufacturing end are coming up with solutions to problems, and that's why we're able to grow markets.
Brilliant, thank you, Brian.
You have to be innovative to stay in the market game.
Yes. And I think it's safe to say that we're seeing these factors and these priorities drive innovation at a very fast and rapid pace in the sector now. We're seeing, as you mentioned there, Brian and Robbie, you're seeing companies incorporate technology, precision agriculture, IoT, automation, and sensors into their products. But another, I suppose, term we're hearing come true is this disruptive technology, and so that's new product and new technology entering the market that hasn't been here before and can offer solutions. And I think a good way of understanding the type of solution that's coming to market is to take a look at the various innovation and cultivator programs from around the world. And I suppose we're privileged today to have on our call two of the leading companies and organizations on this front, with Robbie, who leads the Pierce Lyons cultivator, and James, who manages the Enterprise Ireland Innovation Arena. And Robbie, I'd like to start with you on this front. Perhaps you could give us an overview of the program and the Pierce Lyons cultivator and the criteria for entry and the types of company you see apply.
Yeah, sure, Brian. It's quite an interesting story because we started 3-4 years ago, and we've had 30 graduates or alumni coming through this program. And that period really was a period of learning for us, learning about startup culture, horizon scanning, knowing what was out there. Now after that period, we've completely changed it. And why we've changed it is because we realized that the needs of the startups are a little bit different to what we thought they were in the beginning. So we used to run this sort of boot camp where people would come in and we'd teach them, give them our insights into the marketplace. We'd learn from them, and then we'd introduce them to customers and markets. What we're doing now, we've changed the name from accelerator to cultivator. And what we're doing now is we're starting with, first of all, a pilot project. And the pilot project is not to test the science so much as it is to test the commercial viability, meaning do the customers want it? And how does it fit with companies like Alltech or Keenan or any of our partners, in fact? Because bringing a solution to market isn't about the tech, it's about the commercial viability of the tech. So we do this pilot project, then we move on to doing a commercial sort of partnership at a local level, and then we scale that globally. And so for us, this is a way to bring companies into the business and then potentially invest in them, but most of the time just partner with them. The cultivator is always on, so we don't have a certain start time and an end time. And why? Because we should always be looking for innovation. We should always be open to receiving this kind of advances. We also are focused on putting each of these companies on their own bespoke sort of customized program, because you might have one that has a product that is, could be really good in Brazil, for example, that might be in poultry. Well, that's going to go on a very different track to something that might be in dairy in Ireland. And so, and the needs of the companies are different. So, so we've completely changed that program, and I think that it better meets the needs of the startup community out there. And I also think it's quite different. There are quite a few accelerators out there. I'm not knocking accelerators, they do very well, but this new approach, I think, is more about the commercial partnership.
And
if I could say,
can you give us an idea, Robbie, of the types of company coming through and the trends you're seeing on that front?
Yeah, sure. So when we very first started, it was very dairy focused, dairy and agronomy actually. So there's a lot about drones, about sensors that collect data, dairy and agronomy. Then it moved on probably slightly more into some of the other species. But more recently, I'd say the trend is to have tech that spans the whole supply chain. So, the data you collect on a dairy farm, for example, is not only applicable to the dairy farm itself. You could probably say that, let's say, 2/3 of it is applicable to the dairy farm, but there's 1/3 that is applicable maybe to the feed mill that supplies it, or the dairy processor, the creamery that's collecting the milk, and then also the supermarkets that are ultimately buying that milk. And so this democratization, I guess is the trendy word, democratization of the data across the whole supply chain, that's where a lot of the new tech or trends are going toward. And I am seeing certainly a lot more push into supply chains are a little bit more organized. Poultry, for example, is a very organized supply chain. Dairy is well organized. Beef isn't so well organized in general. I'm talking at a global level, but I think therein lies an opportunity as well. I think the people who can really well organize the beef supply chain have a lot to gain.
Very good, thank you. And James, from your perspective, I know we'll have seen the innovation arena in the news over the last few days. Are you seeing a similar trend come through on that front? I hear Robert mentioned poultry there. I know you have entrance on that this year and things. Maybe you could discuss the types of the product you're seeing come through on innovation.
Yeah, and I suppose I have to say it's 10 years of the innovation arena this year, and was founded by Alfie Cox. So we although we didn't get to go down to have the big marquee with anime, we should be there today. Unfortunately, just mentioning that, but hopefully better times ahead. Yeah, we definitely see very similar to what Robbie is saying. We've gone from traditional manufacturing now to machines that have to get smarter and offer a little bit more. In terms of the other stuff then that's coming through really, and we see stuff on supply chain where lads are looking this year because of traditional methods or engagement. They're looking at platforms for exchanging knowledge, and also the big one is understanding what's happening in the soil. So we've seen innovation on that, looking at a simple thing like soil pH, and you wouldn't believe how that is affected. Like Teagasc would say that 50% of the soils in Ireland are not at optimum nutrition. And pH being the master variable is one that 50% of the soils need lime in Ireland. So we're seeing innovations like FarmEye come through, all about harvesting that data and developing it. And they were there last year. Innovations from Alltech with the InTouch and the InTouch Go and the app that was developed by the team. And this year you mentioned poultry, and it opened my eyes to the poultry industry. We've a startup company here that we're backing in Enterprise Ireland, the IMUS, which is a robot that works 24 hours a day in a poultry farm. It gathers the environmental conditions. It interacts with the chicks that are up from 2 days old, increases their efficiency in feed, and relays that back to the farmer continuously. So 50 billion chickens in the world. I didn't know that either until I met with the company. It's a huge amount of food across every continent, and that's really exciting stuff for us because, as you identified earlier, the pressure that's going to be on this industry to deliver in a sustainable fashion while protecting the environment. We see that. The one thing I'd say about data is it has to, the mechanism, and I think what we're seeing too is that making data easy for farmers to interpret and to get the information across, that it can be transferred from the consultant to the agronomist to the nutritionist to increase efficiency. So if you can look at the other innovations we've had down through the years, it's all about increasing the efficiency. So if you can finish a beef animal in 16 months, or you can get an extra 10% in litres per output per cow, that's the huge drivers of it, and where we're seeing the trends going. I guess we're a little bit different from the Alltech one because we're actually looking at the innovation that's coming from our established companies, And we're also looking at the exciting new startups that are coming through as well. And I think there's a real potential for collaboration here, because there's some really, really great minds that could really add value to our established companies in this whole ecosystem of innovation in ag tech at the moment. And it's an exciting space.
That's a very good point, that it's difficult, there's challenges, and you might have a brilliant idea, but bringing it to market mightn't necessarily be the easiest. Robbie, have you come across that in your experience in dealing with companies coming through the cultivator? What sort of challenges are they experiencing in bringing this new tech to market?
To be quite frank, I think the biggest challenge they have by far is the commercial savvy or the commercial access. So they tend to come to you with a product that is good, or even if it's in need of development, it can be fixed. You know, financially, you know, normally they have an idea as to what they're wanting to sell, but the biggest problem is the sales and marketing angle, meaning access to companies. Sometimes it's a closed shop. I mean, it's very difficult to get into companies that are larger, and it's very difficult to get into other countries. And so, you know, again, it is about relying on a network like Alltech or like yourself, Enterprise Ireland, where you can have an access into those other markets and have those market insights. The offering that they what they offer those markets is obviously going to be different in every market as well. A customer in Latin America is not going to be looking for the same thing as a customer here, and so and even in the benefits that the tech might bring, they're going to need to emphasize different things. So, for example, Europe is definitely on the Green Deal and definitely looking at the environmental stuff. But frankly, the Americans are not there yet. So if you go into North America talking about green, you're not going to get very far. But if you go there talking about efficiency, you're going to get very far. The two are the same thing, but the way in which you communicate it is completely different.
That's very interesting to hear, and it's how you position yourself in marketing that product. And yeah. Brian, I suppose on this front, in your experience in working in various markets around the world, have you seen markets emerge and grow and rapidly grow in the last few years?
Yeah, for sure. Because my role in other companies in the past would have been actually visiting other countries and working on the ground with the distributor to get products up and running and being on farm. And while Europe is getting pretty crowded with manufacturers and possibly have maybe more manufacturers placing maybe less inquiries at the moment, but there are lots of markets that have started working in where there is potential, like in the Middle East, like in Africa. And in Latin America, as Robbie said, I see big potential in all those countries going forward. They're at a stage now where they're trying to develop agriculture. They know they have to develop agriculture because it will help develop the economies in those countries as well. So to get agriculture off the ground, they need to try and use some of us from the European end on manufacturing and our knowledge to try and develop those markets. So they've had quite a bit of experience in Africa over the past few years, and I see population growth so strong down there that to feed their own population, food security is a huge issue. So to produce their own food, they need the equipment and the knowledge. So there's a knowledge transfer business there as well. And again, what Robbie was saying, and that all that information that the likes of Alltech and people have in these markets, they need that to try and develop their own economies. So there is huge potential in those markets. It will take time, but you need to get out there on the ground to get some products on the ground, get reports and tests, and build up a reputation and branding. But it's there for us. I think they're the markets to look at for the future.
Thank you. And Robbie, I suppose on that front, from the perspective of Alltech, is there any particular markets you're seeing emerging, or particular sectors like the dairy or beef growing in certain areas?
I'll answer in a couple of ways. First of all, it's quite clear that the Asia Pacific region is probably the most exciting at the moment. The China and the India. Certainly from an ag tech perspective, there's a lot of new tech coming into those regions. From a what's exciting perspective, I think I'll mention three things. I think James mentioned soil. I think soil remediation is going to be big. So if we talk about 3 years time, 5 years time, I think that'll be quite hot. A second area that I think at a global level is going to be quite big is any of the tech that feeds into I call it fake meats, fake milk market. So the the meat alternatives and milk alternatives. That at the front end you've got McDonald's selling burgers, but on the back end there's a whole lot of science in the back end there where you're going to need new bioreactors, new stainless steel machines and technologies to grow all of those microbes to do the magic in the background. So that's the second one. And then I'd say building up to what I think is the number one, what I think is going to be big certainly in the next 12 months, 24 months is nitrogen. James said carbon. I think carbon is quite topical right now, but I think nitrogen, meaning the NO2 gases in the atmosphere, ammonia pollution in barns and on farms, nitrates leaching into water. This has been around for a while, but I don't think it's captured the public's imagination as much. And I think when it does, I think it's going to be as hot as carbon dioxide. So I think any farming procedures that can mitigate against nitrogen will be big. And I think Ireland is, with its expertise in dairy, is quite well positioned to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. I think it's a big one.
And James, on that front, I suppose when we look at reduction in nitrogen and that factor, that how the customer, I suppose, will need to meet regulations in market and things. Do you believe profitability is more on the front of the farmer, or will it be the requirement to meet the regulations and requirements set down in achieving these targets?
Yeah, look, and that's going to be the big change that I see coming in the future. It's this transition from what we've been used to doing in agriculture to now what we to maintaining production and profitability while not using the traditional tools that we had at our armory. So if you look at what's proposed in the Green Deal, I think it's a 50% reduction in chemical fertilizer by 2030. That's a really big measure. So you're going to look at then how, like what Robbie's been talking about, the alternative ways of increasing fertility in your soil, and even the very machines that produce nitrous oxide. So you're looking at diesel, and we've done huge amounts of work on that in different stages of emissions from engines. So if you look at the whole sector on a whole, it's going to be a massive challenge. But I think the solutions are there, and I think what we are gearing towards that. And a lot of the stuff proposed by Chagas in their MAC proposal, which is looking at reducing carbon, reducing emissions, and nitrogen, looking at a lot of the stuff that we've available already that we need to get farmers to adopt. You look at the trail and shoe technology here that's for reducing ammonia emissions, which are really good at in Ireland. Like we've top class companies and Abbey and Highspec and many others that I won't go into mention here that are leading the way on that. So I do think that we probably need to shift in focus, and I think profitability on farms will again come down to efficiency. And essentially what I'm going to say is, and it could be controversial here, is the consumer willing to pay for the product for the price that's going to be produced in an environmentally friendly manner? So that will be the challenge as well for premium food and low carbon food. Will there be a premium for it? And we don't know that.
Thank you. Robbie, I just want to pick up on one point you made, and it was about the sharing of data across the entire supply chain. And I think when we look at all of these solutions that are coming through and the problems they're trying to solve, it's going to require that cooperation from your supermarket back to the planting of your seeds, or I suppose depending on the type of farm that's occurring. Can you maybe talk to us a small bit about how that data could be shared, or is there do you see it becoming valuable to companies?
Okay, so some of these are my own opinions, some are Alltech's. There's the disclaimer. So first of all, I think the technologies that are being used are predominant. Everyone talks about blockchain, but I don't think that blockchain is going to be a big thing in agriculture because of the restraints of the technology. But blockchain type technologies will, where up and down that supply chain you can share data. I think that it's important that the data is spread, because some of the players in the supply chain need to have visibility of what's going on further down the supply chain. So when we talk about nitrogen or carbon, for example, it's not just one point in the supply chain that is causing the issue or has the opportunity. It's multiple players across the supply chain. And so there will be a push also at a governmental level for everyone to work together. And the only way you can do that is with some sort of a tech that allows you to do it. You also have, some of the players in the supply chain are more vulnerable for disruption than others. So, if you look at how quickly these models are evolving, I think feed mills have a big scope to innovate or be disrupted. Because they're at the very start of the supply chain. It's very difficult for them to take advantage of things that are happening further down the supply chain, or actually get some of that value. Farmers are next in line. It's also difficult for them to get the value. So as James said, are consumers willing to pay for that data, or pay for the benefit of having low carbon or low nitrogen food? Well, they're only willing to pay if the data they're receiving is sufficient that it tells them or that there's a transparency of the whole system. And then once there's that transparency, that allows, let's say, a more equal sharing of that windfall up and down the supply chain. So my blunt answer is I don't think data can be sold. I've been working with InTouch for 4 years now, trying to sell data. You can't sell data, but what you can do is innovate products and better position products so that people can pay more for them, so that you get more money in that way. So you can monetize data, but you can't sell it. And the only way and the best way of monetizing it is by sharing the data across the supply chain, so that you can all innovate together to have an end product that meets final consumer needs. And so I think liberalization or democratization of that data across the whole chain is vital, and it will happen. And last point is, I don't think it needs to be complete transparency. So there are, meaning passing on of trade secrets, I guess, down the chain. You can also have technologies that allow you to select what data you want to share and what data you actually want to receive. And I think that's probably more the future.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Robbie. And I suppose on that talk of transition, I want to next get the panel's opinion on COVID-19. And we've mentioned at the beginning that many of the nation's agribusiness continued throughout lockdown, and we're all aware of the challenges that it presented from an operational perspective, but it's also drastically changed the way we interact with our customer. I suppose the cancellation of major international trade shows is something that everybody has discussed, and it's played havoc with traditional marketing campaigns and demos and product launches. And I suppose in the last week, we've heard John Deere announce that they won't be attending any show in Europe or CIS until at least the end of October 2021. And they're going to focus on a traditional mix of digital and traditional tools to deliver to their customers. And in the last month, we would have seen AGCO launch Massey Ferguson MF8S series and their Valtra G series with really lavish and exceptional online live presentations and virtual models and video. And Robbie, I noticed that back in May, I suppose, Keenan would have introduced the virtual showroom, and one of the first Irish companies to counteract COVID in that response. And I saw also that Alltech would move their One Ideas conference online, which would would have previously taken place in Kentucky. Can you give me a little bit of thought about how you think the future lies with interacting with our customer, and will an industry that was so dependent on pressing the flesh and meeting people be able to adapt to this?
That's a big question, Brian. So first of all, not all of our businesses reacted in the same way. So Keenan, it was more difficult for us to maintain, maintain the sales, simply because we are an on-farm pressing the flesh type business.
Yes.
It was we've done quite well during this period, but certainly sales are not up; they're slightly down. When it comes to Alltech, though, on the nutrition side of the business, sales are up globally, and we're having a great year. A couple of observations. First of all, I think key account management, so when we do key accounts across the world, that's actually become better. I think there's a lot that agriculture can learn from the likes of Microsoft and LinkedIn and Google and some of these big boys who are doing key account management in quite a different way. They're using data, and they're able, with Zoom calls, with GoToWebinar, any of these things, you are now able to have multi-level engagement with key accounts in Germany, in China, wherever. So you don't all have to get on a plane and traipse down there. You can have frequent contact with customers. So customer contact can actually be better, but it does take training, because your people need to be savvy to know how to do it, and also the way in which you do it is quite different. It's a very sharp meeting. And it's following a very strict agenda with a very quick follow-up, and so you can have very frequent touch points. I think secondly, collaboration has been better across the board. So when you talk about innovation and those kinds of things, you can get more people from different parts of the world onto one call at the same time, and you can move things along. So yes, we have actually sped up some of our initiatives. The third point is, I think this is a very unique opportunity for Agtech specifically. So In Touch was a lifesaver for us in countries like Romania, where we weren't able to go on farm, but we could remotely advise farmers on their diets. So in other words, for the first time, we were virtual nutritionists in the true sense, because normally we do virtual, but we also do face-to-face, which kind of makes it a strange mix. So I think Agtech now's the time. When you mentioned our virtual one, that was a very interesting case as well, in which we traditionally have 4,000 people in Kentucky at a conference. This year we're coming up, we had almost 30,000 people, and we casted the net a lot wider.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is it gives agriculture a voice, meaning we're speaking to students, we're speaking to anyone who is interested in listening could come in and listen about agriculture. You didn't have to get on a plane and go to Kentucky to do it. And that means that we can start changing the story a little bit about what agriculture is doing right, versus only focusing on what agriculture is doing wrong. And I think that platform, we now need to learn a little bit more about how we can convert that into sales, frankly, because we got a lot of inquiries, but how do you now advance those inquiries? And the inquiries don't come from the usual quarters. And then in terms of our virtual showroom, we had wow, the response was phenomenal. We had a huge number of inquiries, so much so that we almost couldn't handle them in the beginning, because you get the inquiries, and then how do you then interact with the customer? It took us a while to sort of figure out how to interact directly with the customer, whether it be FaceTime or WhatsApp video or any of those little tools, but always with some sort of a video interaction. And I think so. So what does the future look like? I think it's going to be a hybrid of the two, where we do a lot of online, and this is going to allow us to drive exports a lot easier. I think we're going to be able to pick up clients across the world more easily than we were before, because now you don't need to visit. Maybe, you know, visiting Australia is a nightmare. and not only because of the Australians, just because it's so damn far away. But when you have to go to Australia, you kind of only want to go there once a year. And if you can follow up our video for the rest of it, and then that makes it all much more efficient for both sides of the deal. Those would be my observations as to where we're going to.
Super. And Brian, I suppose from your perspective, in dealing with dealerships, importers, and distributors around the world, how have you changed that virtually? Is it being done by video now? I understand that you told me recently there's a lot of WhatsApp videos back and forward, instant messaging.
Exactly. Yeah, we've gone virtual with the communications again. And it's for the moment, it's the only way to try and get your message out there, is to go virtual. But we've had no issues with dealers or importers trying to use the system and to get the knowledge transfer across there. We're using it for for sales training and technical training to help people understand the product and where they can actually sell it. And we're even using it with end users. We had a wonderful conversation with people in Canada last week using our product, and we got them up on Zoom and had a wonderful conversation for an hour and a half, and to try and develop the product and connect him with an importer then. And we've already managed to achieve that. So there's huge savings for us by not having to fly to these countries and to these markets, and huge time saved as well. So I think we'll all be developing our websites and our virtual communication skills much more from now on. And I think it'll be interesting to see how many sales we all manage to achieve without going to these very expensive international shows as we go forward. I think that link is broken there now for the moment, because the cost of shows and time is just colossal. And if we can achieve not even the same level of sales, but substantial sales without those costs, we can maybe innovate and develop products more. We'll have more money to do that.
Thank you very much, Brian. What we'll do now is we'll take a number of questions from the audience. So you can insert those on the right-hand side here of your screen. In the meantime, I'll just introduce the Sustainable Enterprise Fund. We launched it in April to support companies impacted by COVID, and the aim was to stabilize, reset, and accelerate their recovery. It's helping Irish businesses to rebuild around the impact of COVID-19, providing funding and stabilizes their cash flow, and allows them to adapt their operations and innovation to meet the customer needs. So this funding support is flexible. It's approved against the expenditure contained in a company's business plan, and there's two types available. You have the smaller version of 25 to 50,000, a larger SEF, which is 100 to 800,000. And the criteria for entry is if a company has been impacted negatively by COVID-19 to the extent of 15% or more, or they have costs increased due to the substantial nature of COVID-19, and likewise it can be as if your revenue or your profits are predicted to decline by 15%, or that your forecast increases sustainability as a result of COVID-19. So if you want to learn a bit more about this and find out how to access it, you can do so at enterpriseireland.com, and for more information you can also email businessresponse@enterpriseireland.com. Now we take some questions on this front, and the first question in today is for you, Robbie. It says, what advice would a company looking to introduce a product into market for the first time? What advice would you give to a company looking to introduce a product to a new market?
Okay, well, we're doing this all the time. And I have quite a strict sort of way of doing it. I think, Brian, you can probably echo this as well. I think, first of all, I would say market segmentation. Understand who are the top 10 or customers, or if there are multiple customers, what does that customer look like? And I think a very important point is bigger is not better. It's about the customer that shares the same philosophy as you, the same positioning as you, who's trying to achieve the same things as you're trying to achieve. So where there's fit, I look for those. So I segment the market and find the let's say, top 10 that you're going for if you're looking for the big ones, or if you're looking for multiple small customers, if it's consumer good, then what is the persona of the customer you're going after? In Ireland, you're not going to go after all the dairy farmers because some are on grass, some are producing, they're different. First of all. Second step is then to position the product. So we don't want to expound all of the USPs of our product. It's only the small number of USPs that matter to the customer that we want to be speaking about. So positioning the product. And then the third one is to connect with the customer. Now, that's the most challenging part, because that's when you're, if it's a big customer you're trying to target, a big corporate, then you need to be thinking about what are the connections that are going into that. Who is advising them? Are they veterinarians? Are there consultants? Are there, who influences that business? And can you get in with them? If they are small, let's say consumer businesses that you're trying to connect in with, or customers, then it's about connecting in with understanding who the influencers are at that level. And influencers can be anything from universities through to journalists through to Enterprise Ireland. It can be anyone who influences. And then the final step is wait and be persistent, because it's not unusual for us to have to wait 3 years, 5 years from the first contact with the customer to the time when you actually start making sales. It can be many, many years before you actually make that breakthrough. And very often people think that it's going to be quicker. And very often people think that once you've made that first contact and the customer has said, yes, I'm going to buy this product, that they're going to be that's it. It's not it. You still have a lot of work to do in reinforcing the sale thereafter and then growing it. So those would be my observations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Robbie. Some really interesting pointers there for our client companies. James, I might pass the next one to you. The question is there much room for data and tech development in other animal sectors as there has been in dairy? So I suppose relate this back to what we're seeing coming through in the innovation arena. Have you seen tech come through in other animal sectors?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to be honest with you, I think there's even more need for tech in these sectors, because if you look at what we mentioned already, particularly in pasture-based farming, and the influence the soil and the nutrition will have on going into the future of getting the growth of grass in it. I also think in the efficiency, we're seeing where confirmation scoring and video analysis of animals as they come to the water truck, looking at daily weight gains for beef, fattening cattle. And it's actually nearly more important, because the margins are so tight in that you have to be efficient, and you're looking at ways of improving that. So absolutely huge scope for it. And the good news is we're seeing companies identify with that. And we got one winner this year, Strongbow, who's very much in line with that. He won the IFAC Newcomer Award at the Innovation Area this year. And I think the dairy might be a little bit ahead in terms of the wearable devices and the Moo Monitor and stuff like that. But absolutely for the other sectors, the technology is there. It's just about adapting it and bringing it on into the other animals. Whether it be in dry stock or in the poultry as we had as well. So huge opportunity.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for taking those questions. Conscious that time is coming upon us now today, but a really interesting conversation. I'll just remind people that IMW registration is now open, and the email, if you haven't received the link, is on the screen. And our market advisors from all over the world will be able to support you on topics such as we've discussed today, and give you more feedback on individual markets if you have a product that you feel there's an opportunity there to export. So on behalf of Enterprise Ireland, I would like to thank everybody today for joining the call, and I'd really like to give a special thank you to Robbie, James, Brian for your time and your valuable insights today. There's a lot to take away from it, and I'm sure there'll be a follow-up. If you have any questions, you will receive an email at the end of today's or in the next few days after this webinar, and you can reply with any questions you may have, and I'll do my best to get back to them. And I'll just make you aware of the other supports that are available, such as the Sustainable Enterprise Fund that we discussed, and your local development advisors, of course, who can help you on your day-to-day requirements. And then finally, our COVID-19 hub, which will deal with all the questions that may arise as a result of COVID-19 and the restrictions. And thanks again, everybody, for your time, particularly my panelists today. And we'll have a very nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.